Welcome back to the Real Estate Insider Podcast, where we highlight the agents who don't just sell houses, they walk people through some of the hardest seasons of their life. I'm your host, Jared Sawyer. I've been in mortgage lending for 22 years, and I've learned that the toughest, most important transactions aren't always the most flashy ones. They're the ones where families are navigating aging parents, estates, grief, and really big decisions. You can feel it when you're in those deals. The emotions are heavy, the paperwork's more complex, and the stakes just seem to be a little bit higher than the sale price. That's why I'm especially excited to have today's conversation with Andrea. Andrea's built a highly specialized business helping aging adults and their families transition from homebound living into assisted living, from trustees, attorneys, and beneficiaries who always don't agree, and navigating the craziness that goes on there. On my
Yeah.
side, at Mortgage Solutions, we often broad into these scenarios too. So I have first real hand experience with this. And I think it's really important that if you're an agent out there and you're looking to get into a niche and or understand this more, you listen to this episode because Andrea exemplifies all the qualities you'd want if someone was going to represent your parents. Andrea's been a real estate agent here for quite some time. She's handled more than 300 transactions, including some of the most complex estate and trust sales that I've heard of. While acting as a mediator, a guide, and an advocate, she's built a business where impact comes first and results follow. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on today and making time for all this. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely, Jared. I do appreciate you having me here. I'm super excited to see where this takes us.
Absolutely. So let's start slow with your story. You don't just come out of the gate as a real estate agent and be like, you know what? I want to get into estate sales or assisted living. So how did this all kind of come about? How did you kind of find your niche here?
Yeah, it's interesting because years ago, I knew I wanted to get into real estate, but I didn't want to be like your traditional cold calling, door knocking, open house agent. And I say that lightly because now we're getting into doing some of that type of prospecting. But, I've always had a passion for the older adult population, helped my grandma quite a bit, helped my mom quite a bit. And that led me to actually get a role at a home care company here in the Valley in Arizona. And I was a director of a home care company. And what happened was I eventually started working with the attorneys, with the beneficiaries. Anytime we secured a client who needed home care help, I would have what we called tea time with them, like every 30 days or so.
That's
I
great.
loved it. It was like I had an infinite number of grandmas and grandpas, right?
You can't get into too many grandparents. It's perfect.
No, you can't. You can't. And so I would have tea time. And eventually, it was time for either to increase the caregiving hours to 24-hour care or transition them to a memory care community setting. And sometimes, unfortunately, they passed away. And so, family wasn't here. 9 out of 10 times, family is in a different state, 700 miles away. And I realized there's a huge need because the family had no idea what to do, where to start. They have all this personal property. How are we going to move them into a community? If they passed away, how are we going to liquidate this? Who do we call to do everything? And I was like, oh my goodness, this is perfect. There's a
Yeah.
need. They don't know what to do. I know how to help. I love to help. And I was like, you know what? I should probably go out there and get my real estate license. And the timing was right. They always say like God's timing is right, right? I am a believer. And at the time I was taking care of my mother-in-law. I was her primary caregiver. And so between like pain management, regular PCP appointments, rehab, it was just taking too much of my time. And I felt bad because I wasn't committing to my work the way I typically like to. So I
Mhm.
said, you know what? I will step back, go take the 8-day crash course, nurse my mother in law to health. And here I am 10 years later.
10 years later. So on our previous conversation too, you mentioned that when you're in the home care facility, you kept seeing families kind of facing a choice, either pay $30,000 a month to stay in the home facility or move into an assisted living group. How did quarterbacking those transactions and those transitions kind of help you kind of really identify what you're talking about, is where you saw this gap and you're like, oh my gosh, something's got to be get done here. When did that kind of aha moment happen for you?
I mean, there were times where, like you said, and when we previously spoke, it was $30,000 a month for full time care.
It's just crazy. Yeah.
And while these families were well off, right, because home care is pretty pricey, some of them could not afford the $30,000. And it was truly always my goal to keep them home safely. Because when you're aging, you want to stay home. That's where you're comfortable. But if it wasn't safe for them, that's when I saw the green light and I said to myself, truly, we've exhausted all of our efforts. We contacted potentially a reverse, mortgage company to see if maybe we can tap into their equity to keep them at home. We contacted home health to see if maybe we can supplement home care with home health and even PTOT. Once we went through that process and figured they can no longer remain at home safely. And when I started offering these services to the family members, like nobody had any clue that these services were available, right? So between them not being home safely and family members having no idea that these resources were available, I said, you know what? There's a huge gap between what people know or don't know when it comes to retirement. And I simply want to be the ambassador and the advocate for those individuals and the families who need the resources. And so, as they say, I didn't go into it because I wanted to make a ton of money. I wanted to go into
Sure.
it to help people, but the money followed.
Yeah, I mean, and you said you wanted to make an impact while make a living. So what does that kinda
Correct.
look like on a day-to-day level for you? Because I think a lot of people have an idea about what it takes, but you're really living it. So it'd be good to hear.
It is difficult. I would be lying if I said it was easy. Sometimes I'm going to get the very simple ones where the attorney or the licensed fiduciary will say, hey, we've already done all the legwork. We've already placed mom or dad. We've already emptied the house. We've already cleaned it, right? I'm not dealing with the beneficiaries. But then you have those where you have some pretty contested matters. And not only am I dealing with the older adult population who just can no longer stay at home, you have those who have been suicidal. You have children who were taking advantage of their older loved one. And there was a murder, homicide, suicide, murder,
Wow.
suicide. I've walked numerous types of homes and have learned about numerous lifestyles and individuals where you just would not think you'd have to navigate. And having those conversations is pretty tough, right? It's not just, well, your house is worth 1.7 million or 300,000. It's you lost a loved one or you lost two at that.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really tough. Plus, in your world, in a typical real estate transaction, you're dealing with maybe a couple or a seller or a family member. But in this case, you're dealing with siblings and attorneys, trustees. I mean, how do you navigate the dynamics that come into that? Because that could be really, really messy, really, really fast if you're not careful.
It can absolutely. I mean, perfect example. There was one I was referred a property in the state, and my client is a licensed fiduciary. The owner of the property happened to be a beneficiary of an estate. The mom passed away, the daughter assumed the ownership and inherited the property. Unfortunately, the daughter has a lot of mental health issues. We sold this property last year. About 2.5 weeks ago, I get a phone call at 8 o'clock on a Sunday. And being the realtor that we are, or that I am, I was like, oh, who is calling me at 8 on a Sunday? I decided to answer the phone. Well, guess who it was? It was the beneficiary that has mental health issues and said, you sold my property without my permission. I am going to file a lawsuit. We get this, right? Like this is very, very real. Yeah.
Right. That's so wild. I mean, so how did you end up navigating, I mean, that because you can't just leave a cliffhanger like that for me, Andrew. You
I
gotta kinda go deeper. Like, I need to know how that story ends.
I know, and she's like, "Do you know that there was blood that was drawn in that house? Do you?" And I knew the story, I
Wow.
knew the background, right? And I ultimately said, "I'm sorry. I've never been in your shoes. I can't say I quite understand what you're going through." Right? It's like the empathy. I can't quite understand what you're going through. I wish I could share more information with you. Ultimately, my fiduciary responsibility is to my client, which is a licensed fiduciary. I will share that you called and let them know that you would like to receive a phone call from them. If you'd like, you can also call them directly because, that's who I worked with. But unfortunately, I can't share any additional information with you as to the intricacies of
Right.
the matter. She understood. She was very understanding and said thank you and was appreciative that I was going to share the information with the fiduciary. And That's exactly what I did. Whether or not they called her, I don't know. But I just proceeded to do and follow through with what I promised her I would do, and I haven't received a call since then.
And you haven't been served. So hey, looks like things went well. So yeah, it's
Exactly.
going well. Handled it like a pro, Andrea. One of the things that stood out to me was you're doing 40 plus transactions of this year. And I hope people that are watching or listening can fully appreciate how hard it is to just do 12 to 20 normal real estate transactions, let alone this. So without giving away your secret sauce, because that's not what this is about, but how are you finding your people in all this?
It was very helpful for me that I was the director of the home care company. I think I built and I established the reputation of someone who really cares, right? Because you can't come into this industry and say, I really love this population. Like, I really want to help them, right? Because it is lucrative. There's one thing that's certain, or a few things that are certain, right? We have to
Right.
pay taxes and we're all going to pass away. So it's somewhat recession proof, but it's truly building a relationship with the professionals who are handling this type of transaction or who have clients who are in this age group. But I will tell you, they'll know whether or not you're in it for the right reasons. And it takes time. That's the only thing I can say is it takes time and truly show that you care, not only about their clients, but about them. I mean, I have now clients that I serve. And when I say clients, those are, again, the attorneys, the fiduciaries, maybe some hospice nurses who have personally used me now to help with buying or selling their houses or their parents' houses. So it's being authentic, right?
Yeah.
Authenticity will take you a long way.
So along those lines too, and I get that just from talking to you. Very, very authentic, very much yourself. And I think that's really important, especially when you're trying to find like your people, right?
Mhm.
What are some of the small things maybe that you do along the way? Maybe somebody's watching and they're kind of struggling with connecting to their clients that kind of set you apart. So your clients are like, okay, she's different. This is
Yes.
a real one. Like I need to pay attention to her.
Great question. I'm going to go back to the foundations and the basics, right? And it sounds so mundane, but like success is in the boring and in the
Mm.
consistency. So, especially with professionals, they want to know that you know your stuff. So, like, the Tom Ferry coaches will tell you, you have to study the market every single morning and go beyond just tracking what's going on, locally, but also knowing what does the national data look like? Because with professionals, they're going to ask you what's taking place in the market whenever you see them. It's being consistent with your newsletters and your blogs, right? So we have a blog twice a month, and every quarter we actually send a magazine to our clients.
Oh,
And that
cool.
magazine includes, market stats. It includes what's going on around the valley. It includes what's taking place in my life. Like I put myself out there, and some active listings, maybe some pendings. And on a monthly or bi monthly basis, I like to also stop by those offices and I will bring them, let's say it's like National Attorneys Week. Then I'll just stop by and bring them cookies or make cute little gifts that you would find on Etsy, but just make them myself with my team and drop them off. And you don't like, they're so excited to see you. I mean, at least that's the experience I've had. They're
Yeah.
so excited to see you because it's so unexpected. I mean, an example I can provide is one day I made a little gratitude jar where I hand wrote, like, if you're having a bad day of some sort, pull this and it gives you a, nice little quote. And they keep it on their desk. And I've seen it year after year. It's still there. So it's like a reminder and it does make a difference in their lives. So I'm always about how can I help them beyond their clients? Because we're business owners. It's difficult. How
Sure.
can I make their life easier beyond just business? No, and
I
it's been effective.
I think it's great. I mean, and I think the overwhelming consensus there is you're adding value without being asked to, right? Like your transactions have value, inherently in what you do because of the
Correct.
nature of what you're doing, but you're going beyond that. You're adding value into their lives. And also it's great for marketing, staying top of
Right.
mind. Like, yeah, we like
Right.
Andrea. She brings by these cool little knickknacks and everything that we use all day long. Like
Yeah.
it's really, really good. So if you're watching this and you want some secret sauce in there, she kind of subtly went over it. Do the extras beyond the board because those things will pay off.
Exactly. It will.
So looking ahead, you got some really big goals coming up here this year. Last year in 2025 was really good. Last time we talked, somewhere between 75 and 90 families. Why
Correct.
specifically in that range for you?
It's because I know I can consistently bring in the 50, right? If I can just help 20 more people, then I know I've made a difference in 20 lives. And it's exponential, right? Not only the individual's
Sure.
life, but their extended family. And truly, I'm also looking to a lot of my branding and marketing. People think I do a lot of luxury, which what who doesn't want to service, right?
Sure.
A million, $2, $3 million
Those are fun
property.
houses to sit in. Yeah, for
They're
sure.
fun,
Yeah,
exactly, especially when you're used to seeing hoarder situations. Like, you want a nice, beautiful house that does not have
absolutely.
you know? So my goal in those 20, I'd like to ideally hopefully sell, an additional 10 within that difference 10, a million plus properties. So we're looking not only to, and here's the thing, not because it's a million, but obviously it is very different to what we're used to. But I know that the level of service we're bringing to these individuals, I could very much do the same thing for those a million over, and I see it as a disservice if they're not working with someone who is highly committed to their
Absolutely.
success like I am,
Yeah,
for them.
absolutely, and you're not just growing for yourself either. You got executive assistant, you have a transaction coordinator, a social media matters, some other agents, so how does that factor into your goal setting? Because I get the sense for you that you care a lot, and having
Mhm.
people working with you and supporting you and leveraging that, you're gonna care a lot too. So does that play a
Yeah.
factor into how you set your goals up for the year?
Huge factor, huge factor. For those of you listening, I'm huge on coaching. I'm huge on investing and paying someone to teach you. I mean, it's kind of like a professional NFL player, NBA basketball, player. What do? They have a coach. They coach and train every single day to get better. So I invested in a business coach. Her name's Vanessa Shaw. She's fantastic. One day she said something to me so profound, and she said, as a business owner, you're building an economy around you.
I like that.
I was like, oh my goodness, that is so true. I want
Spot on.
everyone who works with me to live in a healthy economy, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
That's so profound.
Yeah.
So I'm building an economy around it. I'm gonna remember that. I might steal that
Yes.
myself. You said something really honest too about having the right people in the right seats on the bus. What have you learned about building team structure? Because sometimes it's not you instantly get everybody that you need or want in the right position. And as a business owner, it's sometimes difficult to navigate that with also dealing with clients and also being a mom of four and
Mhm.
all the pressures that go into that. What have you found that works with a team dynamic that if, someone's really struggling with that out there, you would say to them?
So I slowly built it. It kind of like slowly, and it happened overnight. Built the team right off the bat. I started with the transaction coordinator because I knew, my strength wasn't in pushing the paper. My strength was in serving in a different capacity. And then, I brought on the executive assistant, and I knew that, if I wanted to do more, help more people, I would have to multiply, right? And I did hire a few agents on the team, and they're all fantastic individuals, like fantastic individuals. But what I think for me, when took that step initially, I kind of jumped through some hoops, right? Like I thought, this is what I have to do. There's already a model out there on how to build a sustainable and successful team. And there are exams like through Keller Williams, you do the KPA, right? To understand, are you the right fit for this, right? I did not have particular agents go through, excuse me, sorry about that,
You're
go
fine.
through the KPA. Once they were on the team, we took the KPA, and I quickly recognized why there was a disconnect,
Yeah,
right? And so it was having tough conversations where I felt terrible, like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to, they're great, but they're just not the right person for the seat, on this
sure.
bus. And I will honestly say that I feel like at least one of them was very much appreciative and almost felt a sense of relief
Mm,
because she was so committed. Amazing work ethic, but was so committed to not failing that it was impacting her, right?
Yeah.
And so when I had a conversation with my financial coach about it, and that's who really pushed me and encouraged me to go through that, she said, not only are you making room for yourself for growth, for evolution, you're making room and growth for them. And when she shared that with me, I said it's true. You might like them again personally, but as a business, it may not be the right fit. And I am impacting their economy
Right.
by
Back to the
keeping them
economy.
here. Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's well put, and those are never easy decisions, especially with the team dynamic, but it
Mhm.
comes with the territory, right? And same thing, I mean, a lot of difficult conversations you have to have with what you do on the real estate side of things. A lot of emotions. I can't even imagine the spectrum that you deal with of just interactions. I mean, you talked about that lady calling you on Sunday, so it's pretty wild. You kinda seem like you're the calm person in the room, though. You
Mhm.
don't seem like you get overwhelmed, what are you doing behind the scenes to manage the stress or maybe the anxiety that comes with that? Because we have emotions too, and even though you might be the centerpiece of trying to keep everything together, you gotta be cool under pressure. So, I mean, how do you do that?
Great question. Honestly, it's a lot of mindset work. Mindset work, it's reading and understanding that it's not personal. Right. And again, like I said, I'm a huge believer. So every morning, and this year I committed to reading the Bible in the entire year. So I take 15 minutes every single morning to read that.
Perfect.
Then I am listening as I'm driving to self-help and improvement podcast, and it's slowing down enough to implement what we're learning, right? And so for me, again, I think the biggest piece would be knowing that it's not personal. If they're angry with something, if a transaction is falling apart, again, it's not personal. As long as I know I've done everything I can to best serve my clients, then the rest always takes care of itself. It really does.
And I think what you said about not being personal, so much of what we do, and even in my own business, you put a lot of yourself and a lot of your energy into it, and you
Mhm.
have to care. And if you don't care, I mean, this isn't the line of work for you, but so it's really difficult not to take it personal. But I think your advice on that is so spot on that there just needs to be this piece about it to go, yeah, this is really not about me at all.
Correct.
I'm just doing the best I can to help this person out. Was there ever like a family story or some friends that kind of reminded you why this matters when it gets really hard, because I know that this can be hard, and you're very professional, you're very charismatic and very, very compassionate, but there is a degree of difficulty that comes into this that does weigh on you at some point. So is there where do you find that strength? Is that something you learned when you were younger, or where does that come from?
That's a great question. My mom was always super encouraging. Like, she was just absolutely optimistic. Like, she worked 2, 3 jobs, right? But when we were around, she was loving. She was encouraging. Like, she would just pour, 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 pour into us. And I think having that example, I know seeing her example has definitely built me and shaped who I am today to give that level of love. Like, it doesn't, no matter what,
Yeah.
I've had clients tell me things like, and this is on the traditional side, because most of what I do with the fiduciaries and the attorneys are typically selling houses. But when I work with buyers, they're like, wait, you're telling me not to make an offer on this property? Why? And these are people who have purchased maybe one or two houses before, and they're not going to the other agent. I was recommended or referred by somebody else, right?
Right.
And I'm like, "Because it's not the right home for you. Remember when we sat down and went through the T chart? Like, these were your top 3 non-negotiables. I think personally you're getting distracted by the shiny object. Go back home, think about it, and circle back with me." Right? And they're like, "But"
So great. People need to hear that. They need to have somebody that they trust that is gonna be their friend and confidant to be able to tell them that. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
it's
what's kinda your hope then? The outcome, like, beyond obviously the transaction closing and, people being satisfied there, but what kinda legacy do you wanna leave with your clients, and have them say, "Andrea was really blank in this whole transaction."
Well, that's a great question. You want me to fill in the blank?
Fill in the blank. There we go. Yep.
Fill in the blank. I mean, truly, she was compassionate, she was authentic and selfless, right? 'Cause it's not about me. I always say that. It's not about me. And one statement I say, "It's not me, it's him through me,"
Mhm.
right? It's I'm just an ambassador, and I'm just listening to what he needs me to do, right? And so, I think that that's the key for me is she was a servant, she was a believer, and I had divine connection and conversation with, an amazing group of people and friends and family and clients.
I think it's beautiful. So it's more than
Yeah.
just a transaction. It's really a connection that's going to carry over long term to not only just you handling it professionally, but having that spiritual connection, that aspect where God was present the whole transaction and really building that for you. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's beautiful. So take all that.
Mhm.
Imagine you're talking to a younger version of yourself before you discovered all this, before your real
Oh,
estate license, you're in your home care job that you're working. Time machine, plop back and you see younger Andrea. What would you say to her? What piece of advice would you give her?
it's all going to work out, and, because I do worry, right? You
We all
worry.
do. Yeah, of course. I think that's
We
natural,
worry.
right?
It's gonna work out. There's everything will fall into place, and continue to believe in yourself, right? Simple as that.
Simple as that. Well, you never know how the internet works. Maybe they'll time travel for you and you can say that via the interwebs and how it works there.
I know, I know. Yeah.
Andrea, thank you so much for making time for this today. Thank you for coming on. Listeners, thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe for more in-depth real estate knowledge. Andrea, if people are watching this and they want to connect with you, how do they find you?
I'm always available via text or phone call. They can call me 602-733-2278, or you can find me through various social platforms. I think it's and honestly, I don't even know my own handle. Isn't that terrible?
No, you're totally fine. We'll post it here. You can send it to me when we get done, and I'll make
Okay.
sure people have a way to get in
Yep.
touch with you.
So social media and email.
It's social media and email, best way to find her. If you have a loved one and they're facing a tough situation and you're not sure how to navigate it, Andrea is your girl. Also, if you just want somebody to represent you or help you, that's going to treat you like a family member, Andrea is your girl.
You're awesome, Jared. Thank you so
You're
much.
awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm Jared Sawyer. Goodbye. Take care and God bless.
Take care.